Hi everybody, I'm Chandler and this is my oral presentation on coral reefs. I'm going to start this discussion by going over the topics I'll be covering, starting with what is coral reefs, why are they important to us, what is coral reef bleaching, how can we prevent it, and then I'm going to be going over some ways that we're trying to restore them now. So let's start by answering the question, what are coral reefs? Coral reefs may look like a bunch of giant rocks, but once you actually take a closer look, you'll realize they're living things. Each coral is made up of hundreds of thousands of little organisms called polyps. Each polyps have tentacles, stomachs, and mouths. There actually is only a thin layer of living coral, and the rest is a hard exoskeleton structure created by the coral solidifying dissolved calcium in the ocean. The hard structure can be decades old and provide shelter for the fish that live there. The polyps can catch small prey with their tentacles, but most of its diet is going to consist of an algae called zooxanthellae. The algae and the polyps have developed a symbiotic relationship, which means they both evolved to become dependent on one another. The polyps will provide shelter for the algae, and the algae will provide abundance of food through photosynthesis. Polyps are naturally transparent, but what gives coral its vibrant color is the symbiotic algae that's living inside the cells. Because the algae needs sun to create food, coral reefs are usually found in shallow and clear waters. Coral reefs are home to a massive variety of aquatic life, and that's where they get the nickname the rainforest of the sea. Next, we're going to discuss why coral reefs are important to our planet. It's estimated 25%, one quarter of marine life, are dependent on coral reefs at some point in their life cycle. Coral reefs provide a habitat to millions of different species and play such a vital role in our oceans. The biodiversity of coral reefs can only be rivaled by some rainforests, even though reefs only take up 1% of the ocean floor. Aquatic wildlife aren't the only ones that rely on coral reefs. Humans do too. Reefs provide food for human communities that live around them and are also a main source of income. The tourism industry generates billions of dollars from people visiting reefs because of hotel visits, diving tours, restaurants, and other local business in close proximity to them. Reefs also provide great physical protection from the oceans. Coral reefs can buffer 97% of the energy from the ocean waves during storms. Without them, our coastal villages can face severe damages and our coastlines will erode at a faster pace. Reefs have also played a key role in modern medicine. Various drugs are now being developed from the coral itself or the animals that live around them. So, what's coral bleaching? Corals can be extremely delicate. Small increases in acidity or changes in temperature can kill the symbiotic algae that allows the coral to thrive. Without the algae, the coral will lose its vibrant colors and start to turn bone white. You can see in the picture to the left of the slide that the coral has started the bleaching process, and it's starting to lose its color. Coral reefs can survive these bleaching events, but it puts them under an incredible amount of stress and makes them more susceptible to disease. If the zooxanthellae don't populate the cells of the coral in only a few months, the coral has a significant chance it will die. We've seen massive bleaching events occur plenty of times in our recent history. In 2005, we lost half of the coral reefs located in the Caribbean due to one bleaching event. This example just shows how fragile these habitats can be. As more events like this occur, it will decrease the biodiversity of the coral and make reefs simpler in structure. In turn, this will provide less habitat for the species that live there. What causes coral bleaching? In the previous example regarding the reefs of the Caribbean, satellite data showed that the thermal stress on the coral in that area was greater than the last 20 years combined. The rapidly rising ocean temperatures are the number one cause of our recent bleaching events. Coral bleaching has increased from 1 in every 25 to 30 years to now only 1 in every 6. The increase in greenhouse gases are causing our oceans to rise in temperature, but are also causing them to become more acidic. The main culprit for this is the 22 million tons of carbon dioxide that is being absorbed into our oceans. This is higher than the last 400,000 years. A few other things that can cause coral bleaching are the shallow tides that are exposing the coral to the sun for long periods of time, lower than usual tropic water temperatures, and runoff that can carry pollutants into the ocean. How does bleaching affect the environment? In 1997 to 1998, El Nino caused a bleaching event that killed 16% of the world's coral reefs in just 12 months. Coral reefs play a vital role in our environment, and we could potentially be watching them go away in our lifetime. The world has already lost 30 to 50% of its coral reefs, and if nothing changes, the tropical reef ecosystem could go extinct as early as the end of this century. Global reefs are estimated to hold an economic value of $375 billion a year and are also providing food and jobs to over 100 countries and territories. The economic impact alone from losing them would be catastrophic. For some countries, coral reefs can contribute up to 80% of their annual income. The livelihoods of places like the Philippines, Fiji, and other coastal nations would be put at risk. I described in the slides above that a quarter of marine species depend on coral reefs at some part of their life cycle. The biodiversity of our oceans would suffer an immense loss, and many of the marine wildlife we see today would go extinct. Without our reefs, seaweed would cover the ocean floor where coral reefs once stood, and provide little to no protection from the powerful ocean waves. Our coastlines would be susceptible to increased erosion rates and push communities further inland. It can be hard to predict the chain reaction of events that would occur from losing our reefs, but it would truly change the world as we knew it. So, what could we do to prevent coral bleaching? As we know, rising carbon dioxide levels can increase the ocean's temperature and acidity. Using alternate modes of transportation could reduce the amount of greenhouse gases individuals produce. Transportation methods like walking, riding a bike, taking public transport, or even using an electric car can be a more environmentally friendly way to get where you need to go. Conserving energy is another way we would be able to help reduce our carbon dioxide levels. At home, we can try to use energy efficient appliances and turn off the lights and electronics when we're not using them. Everybody has to make a conscious effort to lower our greenhouse gas emissions in order to make a difference. All the small things really do matter and will truly add up and create the change our planet needs. Corporations and governments need to move towards using renewable energy sources because they could be responsible for making the biggest impact on climate change. Having regulations in place like the Environmental Protection Agency's Clean Power Plan, which places national limits on carbon pollution from power plants, could be the catalyst to move towards using low carbon resources. Many states like Texas have had wind power supply up to 45% of the state's energy demand on multiple occasions. We have demonstrated using renewable energy is possible, and the sooner we implement a low carbon power grid, the sooner we will see significant change to our global warming crisis. Reducing pollution and stopping destructive fishing practices can help our reefs, but the biggest threat of all is the bleaching events caused by increased ocean temperatures due to the current state of greenhouse gas levels. So everybody should be asking themselves, what are things they can do in their day to help make the change? Lastly, let's go over what are some things that we're doing to restore our coral reefs. Over the past few decades, scientists have learned how to grow coral in nurseries that can be then replanted on our damaged reefs. We discovered by breaking coral into small pieces and placing them on underwater structures in the right conditions can actually make coral grow at much faster rates. The fastest growing corals can grow only 10 centimeters a year, but many species will only grow a fraction of that rate. Because this takes so long, it makes it extremely challenging to recover from these massive bleaching events. Through the effort of coral farms, we are finally able to actively restore reefs instead of just implementing methods to protect them. Scientists are able to study coral in these nurseries and figure out which ones are more resilient to higher temperatures and acidic water. Using this research, we could start to implement more resilient corals in our reefs which have a better chance of surviving future changes in the environment. The Coral Reef Conservation Program helps out nurseries around the world by providing funding and technical expertise to coral restoration products. The CRCP planted over 10,000 coral in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, which is predicted to grow in acres of restored reefs in just a few years. There still is a lot of research needed to be done to restore our reefs, but luckily, the world has recognized the urgency of the coral reef crisis. Now that we have the technology to help our coral reefs grow, the next stage is to increase the scale of the nurseries and to replant coral on a much larger operation. Thank you all who viewed my presentation. I'll be ending this with the sources I used to create this project.